That's a very nice way to start the live stream. It just says Bruno Lastorina across the whole screen. Oh, let me just try something. Let me just try doing this.
The question, the solution.
Oh, there we go. Good European morning or Asian evening or American middle of the night, dear IOL participants, team leaders, and everybody who's watching us. I am Alexei Pegushev, the chair of the jury this year, and we're gonna do this solution presentation right now. Except there's going to be one small difference. It's not going to be just a presentation. I wanted to make this more of a conversation, take advantage of the formats that we're having, and give you a chance to ask any pressing questions you might have had to the jury. So please, YouTube, use the YouTube chat as much as you want. You can ask the questions about the problems or pretty much anything related to linguistics or IOL, and we can answer that. And also, you don't have to use English. You can use whichever language you're comfortable with, and we'll deal with that as we're supposed to. So since I'm not going to stick around for the closing ceremony, because I'm not in Latvia at the moment, I'm streaming this from Histon, UK, together with 3 other problem authors whom you're going to see a little bit later. I also wanted to talk a little bit about something else before we start. So first of all, I would like to thank very much the what is the biggest and jury in history of the IOL at the moment. Here are all the people that worked really hard this week for you to grade your works. So I hope you enjoy your scores. What could I say? I'm really grateful for everybody who sacrificed their sleep in different time zones, and if anything, sleep deprivation and was a major theme for our grading session. So the main thing that I remember is just everybody apologizing for falling asleep, but we did it. We got your scores. You're gonna find them out in a second. And I would also like to thank the invigilators, which is something new for the IOL, but that was those people did very important and sometimes difficult work on a short notice to ensure that we can sustain the tradition of IOL during these difficult circumstances and make sure that the competition runs fairly. I won't be able to name everyone, but all the people who helped don't even fit on one screen because it's just half the invigilators, and here are the invigilators for the other half of the countries. So yeah, huge shout out to them and thanks. Of course, I would also like to thank the local organizers whom you will see in person just in a couple of hours, and you will find out more in detail who was actually behind the scenes, and the participants for adjusting to the circumstances and still being able to solve the problems, and on many occasions submitting some really good high level solutions which were enjoyable for us to read. Also, special thanks goes to the participants in the easternmost time zones who had to endure 2 extra hours under supervision. Or yeah, this is certainly greatly appreciated. And also shout out goes to those countries and participants who unfortunately could not participate due to the COVID situation, particularly Malaysia and Thailand, who had to drop out at the last moment due to the national lockdown, and any other participants and countries who were not able to join. Thankfully, there was still a large number of us, and we were able to keep the whole thing alive. And now we can go to the problems. Let me just change my presentation. Nope, not it. So before actually I talk about the first problem on the Acrylic numerals that was composed by myself, I wanted to talk about the problem set itself, because it is a bit special and on three levels. First, it was the only one that took 2 years to see the light of day, which was of course not planned, but still we were very eager to get this out for you. Second, it was, if you judge by the average scores, I'm going to give you a little bit spoiler for the closing ceremony, the hardest set ever in the IOL, which I don't know. At the very least, I hope it was interesting to you guys. And finally, I don't know if you noticed, but it is the first set ever in which all problems were composed by a former participant. It is a fact that makes me quite happy, because it shows that the tradition of the Olympiad is growing and now has already undergone, maybe we could call it one full generation. And if anything, it's the 18th Olympiad, and 18 just so happens to be the level of adulthood in most, or in many participating countries. So if you are about to graduate high school, I would encourage the participants very much to, regardless whether you're going to be a linguist or not, stick with IOL and linguistics for a while, contribute to your national Olympiad, perhaps, compose some problems, or organize some national or local competitions, and you will find that it is something genuinely worth doing, both for the opportunities that you can provide for the next generation of young people when it comes to getting introduced and interested in linguistics, and the friendships that you can acquire that I've certainly benefited myself. All right, enough talking on my part. Let's do this. Okay. So the first problem on Acrylic language is written on a quite big language spoken in in Indonesia by 100,000 people, and they have a fascinating, complex numeral system, as some of you have discovered, and complex indeed it is, because it was voted the hardest problem by most contestants. And I have to say I'm sorry about this. That's the first time I'm doing this to you, unfortunately. Oh, yeah, you could just say that out loud. So I was just, anyway, you didn't miss much. I just showed you a nice picture of the Acrylic people and the place where it's spoken to. So yes, hardest problem, at least according to you. Gee, that's weird. Just bear with me. All right, go. Should be fine now. Ekari people, there they are. Panyai Lakes, East Indonesia. Perfect. The problem, very hard. Yes, because the median score is 0, which, is understandable. The average score is actually not that bad. It's 2.4. So much so that it's actually not even the hardest problem objectively. So you need to be looking forward to one of the next presentations. And I'm very happy that 8 people managed to understand the system in full, and some of them so much so that they even wrote extra stuff that wasn't even part of the solution. So great job on solving that. This is how you did, by the way. Yes, we see a lot of non-submissions and 0 over here, which is understandable. So, which also means that if you scored at least 1 point, it means that you did then better than most of the contestants. So congratulations on that. And yes, here are our 20s. So I figured I didn't want to explain everything. I just wanted to show you several different ways how you could get started with this problem. So when you do numerals, you don't necessarily have to go all mathematical on them. You can try and apply more linguistics kind of thinking, because yes, there are numbers and you need to do some calculations and multiply 5 by 6 or whatever, but these are also words. And what I would start with is I would simply try to separate the function words from the number words. You can use your intuition. You can use the fact that some words are shorter than others. You can. So the first thing that I would do, I would just notice all the mas over here. And also I would notice the fact that sometimes it goes as a suffix and sometimes it goes separately. And I would assume, I would make the bold hypothesis that they might mean the same thing, and they in fact do. Well, if they mean the same thing, it's probably some kind of simple mathematical operation like addition or multiplication, or possibly subtraction if it's a system like you have in Yoruba language, for example. But if you're solving, probably go with the simplest hypothesis first. Let's say addition, and yes, in fact that is. And if you postulate just that already gives you 1 point. There's also another option where you can start. So you can look at the fact that one of these numbers given in the assignment has the same value as one of the practice items, and so you just simply can figure out which one that could be. So the first candidate would be this pair from the data. You have 38 and 39, but they're so fundamentally different. And so one assumption that you could make is that it is base 38, and then you have a completely different number here because it's a new cycle starting, but base 38 would be quite far-fetched. There wouldn't necessarily be a good reason to do so. And even at the IOL, we would try to not do something that crazy. So this could be the one of those could be the number that is expressed twice. And indeed, if you just look at this, if you replace iemepia with iema yokarati, then it would make a nice sequence over here. Waroewoma yokarati, and then iema yokarati. And from there, you can already infer some word order. So probably the units come first, and the tens come afterwards. Also, for starters, you feel free to assume that it is a decimal system, which in fact it is. And just by doing this and also understanding that ma means addition, you can try and already make some observations that score some points. By the way, for this ma thing, if you understood that these 6 ma means addition, you already could get a full point without even having to know anything about the numeral system. So try to look out for things like this when you solve problems like this. And then also we can see that there's 5 quite different words for the numbers from 10 to 50. We can notice further things. There's some there's some cycles over here. So you see these 2 similar words, mepina and mepia, and these words containing rati, they alternate. So what could this mean? Well, if we just look at those words, mepia and mepina. No, let's look at those in a second. We'll get to them real quick. So we is 2 and N has to be 1 because we already established that the units come before the tens, and so this has to be 1. We know that ma is an addition. And now you can notice the connection over here actually with Ena being sort of similar to mepina and mepia being similar to Wea. So you can postulate even a base 20 over here, and indeed there are elements of base 20 here as well. But the thing is, you don't necessarily have to go in that order. If you manage to make this observation first, even at the start of your solution, then you'd be able to dig into this conclusion a little bit sooner. But there's also a 4th option. I think most of you went for that, is to simply notice that this number, this word moeto, occurs mostly, actually exclusively in larger numbers in the bottom half of the data set, also in numbers greater than 55. Then your intuition already has to tell you that there's probably some kind of base. Well, what could be a base higher than 55 or 80? It has to be some kind of nice number like 60 or 64 or 72. And in fact, it is 60. And 50 of you, 50 people figured that out, which makes me happy. Yeah, you can just look this, it's 2 over here, 2 over here. It's 120 something over here. So, it has to be 60 times 2, and this could possibly be mine 9, even though it's 4 words that mean just 9. And already you can understand most of the system by just poking at the problem a little bit from different angles. So this problem, I think the main difficulty over here is that there's not one path to the solution that gets you straight forward. You kind of have to poke at it from different sides. And then it should all click and you can get to the middle. So this is how the system looks a little bit more in detail. We can figure out all the units. By the way, the number 7 was not present in the problem for no particular reason. I just didn't want to give even more data to you so that you don't get confused too much. And by the way, these 20 and 40 words, it is actually an element of base 20 system, because mepina means literally 1 person, me is person in Ekari, and P is just an epenthetic consonant, and then the ena and we obviously I meant to put in here, but as I said in the jury, we are all massively sleep deprived, so obviously there are going to be further mistakes in this presentation, just bear with me. Yeah, and then the 60s, they are quite regular. It just goes 60, 2 times 60, 3 times 60. But this is not everything, because, and this was actually the hardest part of the problem that I think only around 10 or 15 people got right. So if you just look at this number over here, we got 343. 60 times 5, 300. Great. Plus 3 plus 43. This guy is 43. So it's like 3 plus 20 times 2. That's great. We have everything we need. But there's this ka binomi that's sort of extra, and we don't really know what to do with that. And I think the most important part for you to get this right was simply to assume the possibility that there could be redundant parts of the system. So ka binomi doesn't provide, well, it does provide some information, but it doesn't provide any information that has not already been covered over here. And so goes for this ka wido part. So now we have to do is spot some pattern, and we can do that over here. So you can notice that the number of 60s at the start and the number which goes after ka at the end, they correlate. When there's 2 60s, there's ka wido, or 3 at the end. When there's 5 60s, there's binomi, or 6 these thingies at the end. And there's also further points in the data. If you also add the examples from task A, you could spot this pattern already. And the good thing for you is that you don't even need to understand necessarily what this pattern means. You can just state that, notice this correlation, and solve the problem and get your full point. But ideally, you would think about it something like this. So why is it here? That would be literally 343 would be expressed as 5 60s plus 43 towards the 6 60. And so that's why the 6 over here is. So it's called overcounting when you are using words from the next numeral that you haven't reached yet. Yeah, so that's the main thing. I guess you can just have a look at this in a more formally presented way. Many of you chose to write this kind of mathematical solutions rather than words, which is perfectly fine. We also skipped over this part, but that didn't seem to be too difficult for most of you. That there would be this demeta word, which is used only when for numbers between 60 and 120. This number, by the way, just means added to. So, you know, they just use different synonyms for addition. All right, and here are the answers. Not going to go too much in detail. Maybe this point is worth covering, that this kind of dual expression works only for 9 and not other numbers, as some of you assumed. Yeah, so 19 can be expressed as literally either 9 plus 10 or 920, which means 9 towards 20. So 9 of the second 10, and that's how you get 20. By the way, you could also notice that there's a bit of a common theme there. There's this form of overcounting, and this can also be classified as a form of overcounting as well. And well, maybe let's just dissect this example real quick. 4 60s and 250 towards the 5th 60. Yeah, that's how it is. I mean, you're going to see the answers anyway in the presentation, and that's going to be it. So when you solve number problems, try to think, still remember that these are still words of an actual language, and you can think more linguistically. And the other thing, sometimes it makes sense to poke the problem through little angles and stab tiny holes in it and eventually get to the middle. All right, let's see if we have any questions at this point before I invite the author of the second problem. No question so far, at least nobody's copied them to me. Right, Ellie, do you want to come on? Let me just put the presentation for you. Yeah.
How do I share the presentation?
It should be on.
How do I make it full screen?
This. Yes.
Okay.
Let's go.
After a little bit of technical assistance from Yasha, we are ready to start. So my name is Ellie, and I came up with the idea for the problem on Zuni, and then it was refined with the help of my colleague Sam, who saw the original version, saw that it was a mess, but saw that there was potential. And I'm really grateful to him for helping me sort it out into something that looks more like an actual problem. So Zuni, where in the world is it spoken? Here I've got a map of America, and in red on the left is highlighted the American Southwest. And then if we zoom into these two states here, which are Arizona here and New Mexico on the right, we can see the Zuni pueblos in dark red here in New Mexico. And then there's also some Zuni land in Arizona. The other peach colored stuff here is other Native American lands in Arizona and New Mexico. So first I want to talk to you about the people who speak Zuni, because I think it's important to think about the people who speak these languages and not just the language itself. So we have a picture here of Zuni people doing traditional dances in traditional dress. The Zuni group are also called Shiwi in Zuni, and there's about 20,000 enrolled members in the tribe. They've lived in the US Southwest for thousands of years, dedicating themselves to farming their land to produce their own food, particularly maize, wheat, and a lot of other crops, which I'll talk about in a minute. They have a matrilineal system, which means that that's to do with the mother's side of the family. So your descent is determined by your mother. And it's a culture that's very rich in artistic traditions. Some of the main ones are making jewelry, pottery, painting, and there's these small carvings called fetishes. And I've got an example of one here. It's a very small little bear that I thought was very cute. And that is the Zuni word for bear in Ship. So I want to talk to you a bit about food, because a major theme of the problem was food. And when we spoke to our consultant, he wanted to tell us his favorite dishes from the Zuni culture, and he told us about the crops that they grow. So apart from maize and wheat, some of the main crops are squash, pumpkins, beans, melons, chiles, onions, alfalfa, and cilantro. And there's also other non-traditional crops that have been introduced. Some of the favorite dishes that our consultant Wells named for us can be seen below, and I've put the Zuni names for these as well. And here we can also see a picture of Zuni bread loaves that have been baked in something called a horno. That's a beehive-shaped adobe oven, so kind of shaped like this. And the bread loaves are baked in there, and juniper wood can be used for kindling. So I've got the little picture of the juniper branch there, which we included in the problem. So there is some different foods you might eat if you went to the Zuni homeland. I also want to talk a bit about mapping the world, because in the problem there was a Zuni place name, Makiane. The Ashiwi Awan Museum has a collection of map art which depicts Zuni ancestral lands as they were before they were remapped and renamed to non-Zuni things by non-Zuni colonizers, i.e. the Spanish and the English. Maintaining knowledge of Zuni lands, sacred sites, and cultural landscapes is really important for the community. And that's part of a general idea in the world in general, that we should have Indigenous peoples tell their own stories in their own words, on their own terms, rather than someone else putting words in their mouth. And if you want to learn more about this idea, please go online and look for information about Indigenous mapmaking, which is about the process of bringing back the Indigenous names for places and for sacred sites, and for decolonization information, because this is a project that's ongoing in history and anthropology to bring back the Indigenous perspective on Indigenous cultures. So in creating the problem, my goal was not only to illustrate interesting semantic concepts, but I wanted to challenge you to think beyond semantics, because this is a linguistics Olympiad, so we've got to think about linguistic elements. So I wanted to think about the expression of singular versus plurals versus collectivities. And I also wanted to think about bound and free roots and how you create words in the first place, because one of my favorite things in linguistics is morphology and how you create words with different affixation strategies. I want to note before we dive into a very quick solution that one word in the problem is translated using an artificial linguist form rather than its real life idiomatic form. If you said Hayawe to a Zuni person, it means planted fields, i.e. a field where you've planted lots of crops and there's a big number of leaves. For example, alfalfa and corn and wheat have a lot of leaves. And there's also a specific suffix that would really be used for piles, which is kiapawane. So that's the only one word where we had to compromise between the linguist form, and the actual real life form, so that the problem could still be solvable. But I wanted to draw your attention to this. So, are you ready to dive into a very quick solution? Let's go. So, there are 2 solvaries phrases with chicken and 2 with peach. And there's 2 Zuni phrases that have dokoko and 2 with mo chikwa. If dokoko meant peach, then that would mean that mo chikwa had to be chicken. And due to the shared mo between mole in the phrase dokoko mole and mo chikwa, that would require a chicken to have something in common with a tree or a pie. And we know that chickens don't want to be pies. So this is not the case. So we reason that dokoko means chicken. And we also have some interesting evidence for this fact from phonesthetics, which was kindly researched for me by one of Team Australia, who told me that dokoko means chicken because this is a prehistoric interpretation of the poultry sound. And I'd like to announce here that that's my new band name, Prehistoric Interpretation of the Poultry Sound. So dokoko mole means either chicken egg or chicken meat. And we're thinking that mole must have something in common with a peach because they share this mo element in them. Peaches and eggs, as we can see in the picture, are both roughly the same shape. So this might be the connection. Let's follow up on that. If it means round or spherical, then what could moe mean? Is there anything else in the data that's spherical? The beads are spherical. So we have moe being the beads, dokoko mole is the chicken egg, and dokoko shiwe is chicken meat. And we can see that where seems to be acting as a sort of plural marker for the beads. So let's look again at the peach words. We've got trees and a pie, and datdawe and malo chikwa. If we means plurality, then datdawe seems to mean trees, and that would make malo chikwa a pie. So another element we can notice is the chikwa element. Peach, pie, and 2 of the remaining words share the element chikwa. And the remaining words we have are tea, sugar, loaf of bread, piles of leaves, and a chocolate bar. Chikwa can't only be edible because 4 of those things are things that we consume for food. The only one that we might not consume for food is piles of leaves. However, a peach and a pie can both be sweet, and so are sugar and a chocolate bar. So what if a pie was a sweet version of one of the other words, i.e. a sweet bread? But then another word also needs to mean sweet bread because we also have muchikwa, and we know there are 2 different words for bread. So this has got to be the chocolate bar, right? Because it's definitely the most bread-shaped remaining thing. It's kind of a flat shape, like a loaf of bread. So that leaves us with sugar being ma chikwa. And we can't match the other 2 words at the moment, but we know they share a plural ending and they share leaves in common. And that makes sense because we know that tea is made from leaves. Le also seems to be behaving as a singular marker for 1 egg and 1 loaf of bread. So we'll follow that up in part B. So if sugar is ma chikwa, that means it's the sweet version of something singular in the second set. Okay, how about sweet granules? Because we have granule in the singular. That would make some sense. We then have ma kose, and kose doesn't appear anywhere else in the data for us to draw a comparison. So that means its meaning must be somewhere in the tasks. So let's have a look. We find the word salty. Okay, salty granules means salt. Let's try that. That means the last ma word is ma kyawe, and we know we're looking for salt water. So if that could be granule water, then ha kyawe from part 2 could be leaf water, and tea is made of leaves and water. So this seems to make some sense. And that means that hayawe is piles of leaves, ha is a leaf, we is plural, but we don't know yet what ya is, and we're going to need to come back to that later. The only other watery substance in part B is blood. So let's say ade kyawe is blood. We don't yet have a sturdy hypothesis as to what ade means, but we can keep going anyway. Ade muwe would need to be blood clots. It has the plural ending, and it seems from our working that it's etymologically related to bread, which is a bit unusual. But if you think about it, a bread loaf and a blood clot are kind of lumpy things. So this could work. Let's move on anyway. There's 2 juniper words and 2 words with the element homa. So we find that one is plural because we spotted that we, and so we can find that homawe is juniper leaves and homayane is juniper branch. So what does ya mean? We find it in both homayane and we find it in hayawe. And from the little picture that we included, you can see that that's a juniper branch and it has many juniper leaves, just like a pile of leaves has many leaves. It's very nice. It looks like ya is indicating a collectivity, which is one thing that has many parts. So then beyane would need to be a collectivity of something we've not yet seen, because this bear has not been seen before. And here we have a field of grass, a single collectivity of many grass blades. And that leaves mile as one ear of corn, or corn cob, as it was sometimes translated for other languages. It makes sense. Le is for singular, and we've not seen corn anywhere else, just as the same as mi is new to us. Before we do the tasks, let's check up on the few parts we didn't yet explain. So let's start with the nene ending. All the words with nene are singular, but didn't we already say that that was le? What's going on here? Except wait, the words that add nene add it to more than one syllable, and le attaches to single syllables. And now that we think about it, the polysyllabic plurals are lengthening their first vowel before they're adding we. Another point to iron out is that water and meat are taking plural endings, which seems maybe unusual. But if we think about these words, they're generic mass quantities of things. And in the tasks, we can actually see that we're specifically asked to give the word for a discrete piece of meat. So maybe shiwe can be used to talk about meat in general, and kawe means water in general. The last puzzle is why some of the compounds don't necessarily seem to need singular or plural endings, but we can see that these compounds all end in the same type of element, which is a word that doesn't seem to need further affixation when it stands alone. And we can see in the data and the tasks that chikwa, tokoko, and ade can stand alone, so kose must be able to also. And kawe has got an ending already, so it can't have another one, that's just greedy. The last thing to note is that in these types of compounds, the first vowel lengthens. This is not the only strategy of creating compounds in the Zuni language. This is just one little way of creating compounds. If I showed you all the different ways, the problem would have been much harder. And then I think you all would have been in much greater floods of tears than you already were from the difficulty of the problem. So the answers to the tasks, I'll go through the task, is that ade must mean blood, because we know that one of the words means the same thing as something above, and we didn't know what ade meant. So ade kyawe is blood water, and a blood clot is literally blood bread. And in part E, we asked you to think of what makyayane could be. And it's a salt lake, which is a single collectivity of salt water. And we know it's not the sea because some kind soul has added a footnote to tell us that there is no sea in the Zuni homeland. I don't know who that person could be, but that's really nice of them. You couldn't solve the problem without this note. Makyayane is not a swamp, it's not a stream of the juniper water, it's not the holy person's rod, it's not a field of blood, it's not the place of souls, it's not a field of gods, it's not blood leaves, tree blood, chicken bleeds, and it has nothing to do with eggs. It is a salt lake, the Zuni salt lake, which is where Zuni people have been collecting salt from. They believe in a goddess called the Salt Mother who lives in the salt lake, and flakes are collected from the lake to use for culinary and ritual use. In the early 2000s, the lake was threatened by US government plans to develop the area for a dam and a pipeline, but the Zuni people resisted this, and Makyayane still lives today. So grading the problem. We can see from the little chart on the right there that a lot of people scored 0. It was the #1 hardest problem. 77 students scored 0. The average was 2.05. You may be interested to know that that means it's not the hardest problem in IOL history, but it is one of them. 187 people gave it a go. I think a lot of people gave it that problem a go by simply guessing the matches, but that's all right by me because at least you're giving it a try. I graded the problem with Ivan Dajansky, Stanislav Kirevich, Boris Yomdin, and Daniel Rutsky, who were a fantastic group to work with, and I'm very thankful for all of their hard work. So that brings us on to the part that everyone's been waiting for, the best solution. We decided not to give one, and all I can say for this is to quote one of the Finnish contestants. Sorry. However, I would like to tip my hat to the efforts of 5 people who acquitted themselves very well in this problem, who are Alexander Hoviadin from Ukraine, Dylan Lim Chung Kiat from Singapore, Alexandra Limonova from Russia, Roman Shabanov from Netherlands, and Son Sung-jun from Korea. And thank you to everyone who attempted the problem. It was a very hard problem. So if you gave it a go, thank you, no matter what you scored. To end, I'd like to say an enormous elahqua to Wells Mackey Jr., who was our consultant. He advised us about both the Zuni language and culture, and we could not have made this problem without him. He was very generous with his time and his energy to help us create this problem. I've also provided a list of resources that you can have a look through at your leisure. Some of the best resources are those created by Curtis Cook, who has been working with the Zuni community since the 1970s to revitalize the language. So if you're looking for a good place to start, I recommend Curtis Cook. And all that's left to say is Don Yadon Kokshi Suna Kyatu. May you have a pleasant day. Thank you. And now I'm going to hand over to Liam, and hopefully the transition will be very smooth. Not Liam. What am I saying? To Lasha. I would not make a good host.
All right, thank you for transferring me the headphones. Yes, so we got a question about the best solutions for problem number one. I already informed you that the jury is massively sleep deprived. No, we gave the best solutions to problem number one, and it's actually they're not just the best solutions; they're actually really good. So let's just go back to problem number one real quick. It's happening. Just give me time. Wait. Ah. So we've had 8 people who scored 20, and 2 of them also ended up making deeper observations. And we decided to give 2 best solutions for problem number one. They were fundamentally different. The first one was really nice linguistically, and that person even managed to write the etymology of certain words, of certain numerals that weren't even part of the task. And the other person went like this mathematical approach, but they managed to make it really neat and structured with no extra stuff, only substance. So if you are still competing next year, I highly recommend going on the website after this IOL and studying how to write solutions from these 2 people. And they are Daria Krivashev from Ukraine and Hibiki Sugawara from Japan. And while we're congratulations, great job and everything. And while we're at it, I just wanted to add something to Ellie's presentation. So yes, these 2 problems were very hard, obviously, but I promise you we're not doing it on purpose. We love seeing you actually solve the problems. So we're really giving out you these tips. Look at morphology. Morphology is beautiful. It's gonna solve you problems and get you points, and you'll learn wisdom from it. All right, that's gonna be it. I'm gonna now give words to Sam. Headphones. Never mind me.
Hi everyone. So I'm going to briefly talk about problem number 3 on Kiloview, which wasn't thankfully as hard as either of the previous two, but we'll find out more about that later. So first of all, we're going to talk about where Kiloview is spoken. So it's spoken in Papua New Guinea, in an archipelago of islands called the Trobriand Islands, which are well known in anthropology because of their participation in something called a kula ring, which is an example of a gift economy. So this is made very famous by Bronisław Malinowski in 1920. But yes, I haven't got into too much detail here. But if you're interested, you can read up more about that. There's loads about it online. I'm going to briefly go over the solution. So we awarded 12 points for the theory and 8 points for the tasks. And you can see how we split up those points based on each of the criteria within each of the kind of sections of the solution, because there are lots of moving parts here. So we awarded points for the word order, the verbs, the nouns, the classifiers, which is one of the main things, and also the demonstratives, which is also one of the main things. So in regards to word order, so in non-questions, the word order was verb, object, subject. In questions, the noun phrase that was being questioned moved to the front of in front of the verb, so to the front of the sentence, and everything else stayed where it was originally. And in noun phrases, you started off with the numeral or the question word, then you have the noun, then the demonstrative, and then the adjective. For verbs, most people noticed that you have this past tense le and this future or hypothetical or non-past tense be. And then we also had a suffix on the verb for when the subject was plural, so that's si. And on the verb gisi, this becomes gisesi when you add this plural subject marker. On nouns, so not all nouns are marked for plurality, but some are. And when they are marked, the way that they're formed is irregular. So one example is gwadi and gugwadi, which you had to figure out from the tasks, was child and children. And you can see there's often this kind of almost reduplication element at the beginning for lots of them, but it's not quite regular. So you just kind of have to figure out that there's some irregularities going on. And that's one of the kind of key parts of this problem, was that there was irregularities throughout, and you kind of had to figure out which bits were regular and which bits weren't. And then the main part of the problem, I think, was this classifier system. So in Kiloview, the nouns are split into 5 classes, each of which has an associated prefix. So we have to or te, which is used for men, na, which is used for women and animals, and also other things, but only women and animals in the problem. Gudi is used for children, which is obviously related to gwadi somehow, probably historically. Ke is used only for canoes in this problem. It actually refers to long objects that are made of wood. So in this case, they make their canoes out of wood, but it can also be used for ceremonial carvings out of wood, which are also long and thin. And so those also use K. And then we also have this other classifier called que, which is just for things and objects, so can be stones. And these prefixes are attached to the adjectives, the numerals, and the demonstratives. And the demonstratives, so this is this and that. So we have, if you put an a at the beginning, it becomes which, so it's a question word. They all have this prefix ma or or mi. Then you have the classifier, then you can have a plural si, which is the same si as you find in the verbs as well. And there's we for when it's that, and then there's always this na at the end as well. And it's important to note that before to, you have to, and before na, you have mina. And apart from that, the prefix looks like ma. So the solutions for task A were, as on screen, I'm not going to read them all out because they're quite long, but I'm just going to note that the ambiguous sentence was sentence 17, because of the raising of the noun in front of the verb, it's really question which noun is the subject or the object if they both have the same number, if they're both plural or they're both singular. So in this case, in 17, it's ambiguous because it could be the men seeing the world's children, or it could be the world's children seeing the men, and we don't know which one it is. And then in task B, I've included all of the examples. If you can remember whether you got them right or not, congratulations. I don't think I would be able to remember. But yes, if you want to look back on this afterwards and check whether you got it right, feel free. So I just wanted to talk a tiny bit more about other classifiers that are found in Kiloview, because the system is much bigger than I presented in the problem. So Günter Senft, who was the major linguist whose work I based this problem on, has said that he's documented 176 different classifying particles, of which he's observed 92 in normal speech. So I've given a few more examples here, which I found interesting. So we have a special particle for trees. So bois, mabuana kai is this tree. And the word kai, meaning tree, is actually probably related to the k prefix that they use for long, thin wooden objects. And then we have a special classifier for days, which is kala. So makala sinayam is these days. I've also noted here that na can be used for stars and moons and planets. So navila tubukona is some months or some moons. We also have special classifiers for when fish are rotten. So we had this word yena in the problem, but in the problem it had the classifier na. But if the fish are rotten, we can use this classifier puasa instead. So ma puasa sina yena would be these rotten fish. And I thought it would be fun to note that we also have this classifier kila or kili for clusters of bananas. So we could potentially say how many clusters of bananas as Kiloview, although it's actually likely to be related to the name of the island it's spoken on, which is Kiloview. This problem was initially graded by Bruno Lasturina, Dan Miria, Mina Nordvik, and myself. But you might have heard a little bit from Lyosha about all of the sleep deprivation. And this was the problem that deprived the sleep from all of us. So we were grading this throughout the night and enlisted the help of 6 more jurors, Gabriela Hladnik, Boris Yomdin, Maria Rubinstein, Lyosha, Liam, and Ellie. So 4 problem authors ended up grading this one altogether. So this ended up being the biggest grading group for an individual problem, I think, in IOL's history, with 10 of us working on it to get the results to you on time. So speaking of the results, it was submitted by 94% of you, so 204 contestants. 8 of you said it was the hardest problem, but 67 said it was the easiest, which is the second most of you. And those 67 were correct. The average score was 9.41. You can see from this diagram, not many non-submissions, but there seems to be 2 peaks, one about 0.5 and then one about 15. So people either got not very much or they got quite a lot, but not everything. In fact, only 2 contestants received 20, although a few more got it around 19 or so. So we have 1 best solution out of those 2. And the best solution goes to someone from Russia, Grigory Solnishkin. So congratulations, Grigory. This was the best solution by far. It had everything we wanted, all of the weird rules, all of the intricacies. It was really well written, and you'll all be able to read this on the website when we publish it. And I just want to say amatokisi, or thank you, from all of us. And by that, I mean all of us. So I'm gonna pass over to Liam. So thank you very much.
No. That was bad. You know, we need to share. Yeah, share first. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll be presenting the fourth problem, Acrylic bar, or as it should be pronounced really, Aberiba. So I'll start with the grading. This is graded by Alexander Papersky, Pan Tongla, Dmitry Gerasimov, and myself. This was also submitted by quite a lot of people, so huge thanks to everyone who helps translate things. This also went quite late and deprived us of quite a lot of sleep. So it was really a team effort from everyone. And then I'll do the stats early on. So this was actually the second easiest problem by average score, just below Sam's. So 9.18 out of 20 was the average score. But 10 people managed to get absolutely everything correct, which was really nice to see. It's very satisfying when someone's worked out the entire thing and 10 of you managed to do that. And here's the histogram. So nearly everybody submitted something, and then of people who submitted, nearly everybody got somewhere in the problem. They managed to write down at least a few things, and there was a good range and a good spread of really high scores, which is very nice to see. So this problem is about a secret language, which is a way in which ordinary language is transformed so that it obscures what is being said, and that usually involves adding syllables in this case, or you can move around sounds or syllables. And there's loads and loads of examples of this, in so many languages all over the world for many different reasons. So for example, in English, we have Pig Latin, which is a type of English, not a type of Latin. And there's this memorable example from The Lion King, where, but it says, "But Zazu, you told me they're nothing but slobbering, mangy, stupid poachers." And Zazu says, "Ixnay on the upid stay," where the language game here is you move the first consonant, so in this case, st, to the end of the word and add a, and that kind of hides the original meaning, the original word. And then we have another example, which was given by a contestant from Azerbaijan in their solution, which was really nice to see. And I'm really grateful to the person that wrote this, because I definitely want to look into this. So they said that the logic of Agrarigba is the same as Ku language, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, in which you add Ku for each hejer, which I think is a syllable in Turkish. So it's the same kind of thing where in order to hide the word, you add a bunch of syllables in to obscure what the word originally was. So yeah, it's really nice to see, and it's great that that you are bringing new linguistic interesting linguistic phenomena to us in your solutions, which was really, really nice. So Ogbakiri is a dialect of Ikwere, which is closely related to Igbo, which is an Atlantic Congo language, and it's spoken in Nigeria, specifically on the south coast here in a region of Port Harcourt, which is a city on the south coast of Nigeria. But the Aberiba itself is only used by about 30 people as of 2010, and it was born from a need to communicate secretly by a section of the Ogbakiri community that was in some way persecuted and needed to form their own sort of lect or cant, as it was in the problem, that is unintelligible to other Ogbakiri speakers. So in this way, they add all the syllables so that it hides what they're saying, unless you are well versed in the system and you can decode it back into Ogbakiri. So I'll go through the solution now. On the surface, if you look at all the data, it seems to be it appears to be fairly straightforward. You add T plus a vowel before every syllable, and then the vowel kind of looks the same as the next vowel. But as someone said on their questionnaire, which problem did you find the easiest? 4, but sometimes appearances can be deceptive. And they were right, because although it's quite easy to get into this problem, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things you have to get right to actually get the entire solution correct, because there's actually quite a lot of fairly intricate things going on. So the simple stuff is you insert TV before every syllable that is of the form CV. So yeah, every CV sequence has a TV before it. So that doesn't count words starting with a vowel. So if it starts with a vowel, you don't put this TV sequence before it, you just put it after the first vowel. And the same with these nasal consonants that have that carry tones. They're syllabic nasals. So in mboro, you don't put a TV before the first M. You just put ntubo turo, and then the nasal consonant assimilates, which I mean it changes to the same place of articulation in the mouth as the following T. So in every case, the initial consonant in this cluster becomes N. So mboro to ntubo turo. And then V is in a lot of ways the same as the following vowel, so it's fairly transparent. So it has the same nasality as the following vowel. It has the same tone if it's high or low. But then the falling tone on the original word kind of splits into a high tone followed by a low tone. So you have aya changes to atia. So the high part of the falling tone is on the T, and then the low part of the falling tone is on the ya. And then V is also the same as the following vowel in terms of something called tongue root position, or in linguistic terms, ATR, which is a feature of vowels stands for advanced tongue root. So in the notes at the bottom, someone very helpfully said that e, o, and u are pronounced the same as e, o, and u, but the root of the tongue, which is kind of where the tongue right at the back of the mouth meets like where the sort of throat starts, is advanced or retracted. So for e, o, u, the root of the tongue is pushed forward, and then for e, o, u, and a, which is part of that group, the root of the tongue is well, in this case, it's just not pushed forward. And then in both Obakiri and Abiriba, no word is allowed to contain vowels with a different value of ATR. And this is true of this is a system that exists in loads of languages across the world, and especially in like West and Central Africa, these ATR systems where you have to, every vowel in a word has to belong to the same group. So here, if you said that, you know, there are these two groups and they have to have the same ATR value across the words, then you've got those points there. And then the vowel is always a high vowel, so it's e, u, o. So it's always one of those. And then which one you select is determined by, first of all, which consonant follows. So before a labial consonant produced with the lips, so in the case b, m, w, you select a rounded vowel that kind of has lip rounding. So BC goes to 2B, TC, Rime goes to Tiri, Tume, with the U before the M, and Wene goes to Tuwe, Tine, so the U before the W. And then conversely, before Y, you always select E or I, because they're kind of pronounced similarly. So ya goes to atiya rather than atuya. And then, so this kind of takes precedence over the next determining factor, which is if you haven't managed to determine it from the consonants, instead you determine it by the following vowel. So before the rounded vowels, o, u, and then the back vowel a, you select u, because they kind of have similar sounds. And then before the front vowels, e, I, you select i, because they're also similar. So nda goes to ntuda because they're both back vowels, and then o and oche becomes oteche because the vowel is kind of similar. And that's pretty much it. That's kind of explains the whole thing. And then if you've worked all that out, you can look through the data again and realize that there is an exception, which was task A. So mini to timi tini, meaning water. There's an exception because the M is a labial consonant, and if that followed the rest of the rules of, you know, the ordinary rules of the system, you would get tumi tini because of the labial consonant. And then here are the other assignments. I won't go through all of them, but basically, you know, if you've worked out all the rules, it becomes fairly straightforward. And probably the only sticking point is that you have to remember that there's this nasal consonant here, nya, so nyeria, which isn't actually in the data, but again, at the notes at the bottom, someone has very helpfully told you that this nya is a nasal consonant like all the others, and then that becomes n, so ntia, just like all the others do. And that's it. So hopefully, I mean, most of you managed to find out quite a lot of that. Most of you made good headway into the problem. You ran on lots of things. And then 10 of you managed to get absolutely everything correct, which is great. You wrote down every single point. So that was really good to see. So so of those 10, I want to give a shout out to 7 of them. And so for the following, so Tishia ti ling ti re to tam to nag, to da ti re ti krit to vo tishia ti yeteva, to ro to man tisha to batunov, to mertilin ti fitisha, to meet to hai atilek to xan to dru to bratutu, and oltuga tizi to not ti vieteva. Yes, I hope that was comprehensible. If it wasn't comprehensible, it's on the screen as well. So you should all know who you are. And if you haven't already translated your name into Acrylic, like what have you been doing for the past 3 days? It's literally so fun. And then finally, I want to give, in this case, there are 3 best solution prizes because so many of you got all of it correct. And we couldn't decide between these 3, but all 3 of these, they present all of the they got all the points that were needed, but they also present it in a really clear way so that if you had never approached a problem before, you'd be able to look through the solution, and by the end of it, it would be completely obvious, like you know exactly how it works. And so these ones were like a pleasure to read. And the first one goes to Leonid Zaitsev, or if you don't want to work that out, Leonid Zaitsev from Russia Belka. The second one goes to Atelictosantuda Turoptusen, or if you don't want to work that out, Alexander Robson from UKU. And the third one goes to Artitem Tihrechtuka, that is Artem Prechka from Ukraine E. So congratulations to all 3 of you. It's a job really well done. And we thoroughly enjoyed reading your solutions and also everyone's solutions because you all came up with new interesting ways and provide us with lots of like interesting info and into how you think, and especially providing us that information about the cool game. That was also great to read. So thank you all very much. I just want to give some acknowledgements, in particular to Maureen Abel, who was our consultant. She provided us with verifying some words in the problem, you know, to make sure that we are actually accurately representing the Aquarian language. My fellow markers, as mentioned before, and the rest of the problem committee, for helping translate and also keeping us all sane while we were grading long into the night, and also everyone who submitted solutions. Very nice to read all of them. Gave us a lot of work to do, but that's fine. And also thanks to the 10 people who didn't submit solutions. Only 10 of you. You gave us less work to do, and for that we're also thankful. And then finally, I'll give my sources. So there were 3 papers that I got the data from, if you want to have a look at those afterwards. So thank you very much. And I guess I'll pass over to Andre, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lusha first, and then, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Tilia Tumu, or Tilia Tumi. I mean, we didn't really have like consonants at the names of syllables, so I'm going to go with Tilia Tumi. Oh, great. Andre has already joined the call, so I'm just going to leave it to you.
Hey, hello, can you hear me?
I can. I don't know about others. They probably can.
I'll try to share my screen. Has it appeared? Can someone just tell me if you guys can see it?
I can see.
Okay, so I will start. Good morning, everyone. It's 6 a.m. here in Brazil. The sun hasn't risen, so it's but I tried hard to be with you guys today for this solution presentation. So I will first present my what I take to be correct solution for the problem on the Erikbakcha language, which is a language of the Macroje family of South America. It is an indigenous language spoken by a portion of the Erikbakcha people who live in the Mato Grosso state in Brazil, in this area, on the Juruena River. The name is pronounced Erikbakcha in the language itself. And the data used in the problem come mostly from Lede Jesus Silva, doctoral dissertation, Morphosyntaxe do Erikbakcha Amazônia Brasilienne. And well, I first will say some things about the history of these people. Before the contact with the national Brazilian society, with the white people, they numbered approximately 700. But after the contact, which happened in the 50s, most of them were decimated by diseases, attacks, conflicts, because white people really wanted to use their land. And approximately 2/3 of the Erikbakcha died back then. And they have since resumed their demographic growth. They have a demarcated in reservation, actually 3 of them, Jacuíra, Erikbakcha, and Escondido. But as a consequence of the contact, many of them have lost their language because the Christian missionaries sent them to a boarding school where they were prohibited from speaking Erikbakcha, and this is why the older generation of the Erikbakcha is still ashamed of their language, and sadly, only 44% of the Erikbakcha speak the language fluently. But well, now we can move. Well, this is a picture which shows them. They still maintain their traditional way of life. So the problem. So you had a bunch of data, which clearly shows that it is a typical problem on morphology, where you're supposed to identify morphemes, roots, prefixes, suffixes maybe, and translate further forms from your language to Erikbakcha or the other way around. So the first thing you could have noted is that all verb forms which had we as the subject had end in naha, and the reasonable assumption to make is that naha marks first person plural subject, which is correct. And many of you have figured that out and got your deserved 0.3, if not mistaken, points. So before, except naha, the rightmost part of the of all forms is the root. It corresponds to the verb root, and many of them repeat multiple times. For example, peri is to wait, ikshi is to leave, uru is to sleep, wak is to hunt, moron is to bed, romo is to arrive. I think these are the only ones that actually repeat in the data. But those of them that don't repeat, for example, to cut up, to dance, to hug, and to wait, we can still segment them because the prefixes also repeat. And that way, one can identify further verb roots. Naraha, to fall, gari, to dance, ui, to cut up, and harapuruk, to hug. So before the verb root, we can see the object, because the problem contains both transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. And the transitive verbs have an object, for example, it, you guys, us, may, and other possibilities. So some of them repeat multiple times in the data, and you were supposed to figure out that aha means you guys as the object, I means it as the object, which for some reason was turned out to be difficult for some of you. Ik means me, aha means you guys. Well, these three repeat, and the other three we can segment them based on other evidence. So if we just ignore the parts that we have already identified, the suffix naha for the first person plural subject, the verb root, and the object prefixes that we have identified thus far, we can organize the data as per the person of the subject and the tense. And there are 5 groups that can be identified. First person singular subject in the past, third person singular subject in the past, second person singular or first person plural subject in the past, and in the future there are only 2 categories, because many of you have noticed that I and he, or actually she or it, which was not spelled out in the English version of the problem, are rendered by the same prefix in the future, and you and we are also rendered by the same prefix. And based on this evidence, we can identify the prefixes, the object prefixes that we hadn't identified in the previous slide for lack of data, which is m for us, he waited for us, she, which is third person plural, he beat them, if I'm not mistaken, and a is the second person singular, chipaperenaha, which is we waited, or I forgot what pere means, waited for you. So we now have all 6 object prefixes, and we know the prefixes for each forms. And we see that in each column there are 2 possibilities. For I past, it is 0 or ik. For third person past, it is ni or je. For ye, we, it is either ch or chik. For I/he in the future, it is either p or m. And for you, we, it is either chip or chimon. And we can note that there is a distribution between the 2 variants in each case. Namely, well, this is what we have identified thus far. And the distribution is that the in each column, one form is used before vowels and another form is used before consonants. And it is important that this vowel or consonant can belong to the root or to the object prefix, which was a difficulty for some of you. And some of you have written that verbs such as ikshi, to leave, are actually transitive because they contain a third person object, which is not actually correct. These verbs just happen to start with a vowel, with the vowel E in this case. Oh, sorry, something went wrong here, but I think it's still understandable. So for I past 0, the 0 allamorph is used before vowels, ik before consonants. For he past, it is r before vowels, ning before consonants. For you, we, it's ch, chik. For I, he, it's p, m. For you, we, it's chip, chima. And we can further organize these prefixes. It was not needed for a complete score for the problem. We didn't expect you to do this, but we actually wanted you to do that. Namely, we wanted you to understand that the prefixes, both past and future prefixes, contained 2 prefixes. Like this table shows. Namely, in future, the future marker is in fact p before vowels and m before consonants. And in the past marker is ik before consonants and 0 before vowels, except for this form third person past, which is irregular in a way. And that way we can also identify the allomorphs for each person, which and one thing that very few of you have written out is that the prefix for you or we is ch before vowels and chi before consonants, and for I it is ik before consonants and 0 before vowels. So basically, both tense markers and subject markers have to have distinct allomorphs depending on the following sound. So I've already mentioned that third person in the past has a dedicated prefix, not a combination of these two. And so we have a question from Vladnyaksho. Couldn't a ch just be glosed as two singular subject? Well, it's actually two singular or first plural, but it actually can, yeah. So for third person before consonant, we don't have any evidence because this prefix is only found in future, and the future prefix starts with a consonant. And for transitive, for these prefixes, for the object prefixes, no allomorphs have been shown in the problem because all transitive verbs in the problem start with a consonant. So we don't know from the problem how these 6 prefixes look before a vowel. So basically, this is the structure of the verb. We actually appreciated when you wrote out the structure of the forms, and also gave you 0.3 points for that. And with this knowledge, we can almost solve the problem. There is only one final quirk, which is that the form Big Beje is translated only as he will kill me, but not as I will kill me. Why is it the case if 0 and B can be both he future and I future? The answer is that in this situation, the subject and the object would refer to the same participant, to the same person, or as we say in linguistics, are co-referent. And for such cases, this structure shown here is not implied. It is not shown in the problem, but we know from this translation that if both the subject and the object are for the first person, then this structure is ruled out. It was important for the assignment B. So now we can move to the answers. For the assignment A, we can just segment this into morphemes. It is important then that for the first form, many of you have written that the object is you guys because of the aha, but in this case, actually the root includes the ha, haraparik to hug. So the object is actually just a, you singular. In mu boro, many of you were confused by a sequence of two mu, but mu, the second mu is in fact the first person plural object, and the first mu is a tense marker. For uru, many of you have written that this form is uninflected and have written the infinitive or whichever form corresponds to the English infinitive in your language, which is incorrect. This form just happens to have 2 zero prefixes. One of these and one of these. Actually, in the past, it can only be I past, because the verb root starts with a vowel. In Chikshiwinaha, many of you have identified the first part with the verb ikshi, to leave, which is not correct either, because the verb root comes last. In this case, the verb root is wi, and chikshi are in fact prefixes. Ch, ik, shi. First person plural, past, then. In Ikwak and Rikshi, no such difficulties arrived, and many of you have succeeded to translate correctly Ikwak and Rikshi. So green shows the object prefixes, red shows the naha, first person plural. These are the prefixes, the way they should be analyzed. In Mumiboro, also a further difficulty was related to what I had just said about the first person participants, since it is not reasonable to assume that this word means I will bite us. I mean, it is actually possible, but I don't recommend trying. That way, the only correct translation is he will bite us, but not I will bite us. So these are the correct translations in English. As for the assignment B, I will just give the translations one by one. We will fall is what we already accidentally showed the correct form. It is chi for the subject and naha to indicate that the subject is first person plural. The plural prefix, the future prefix is mun, and the root is naraha. So the correct form is chimu naraha naha. I bet has a 0 prefix for the first person because the first person is always 0. First person singular, I mean. Ik is the past prefix and mono is the verb. Ik mono. I bet. You beat us, so the prefix will be either chi or chi, but then we have the past, which can be either ik or 0. But as the prefix for us, mun, starts with a consonant, we know that the past prefix will be ik mun, and the subject prefix will be ch, chik mun boro. Chik mun boro. I will wait for them, or he will wait for them. In this case, actually, it's more reasonable to start with the root, which is better. Them is she better. And future before consonants, and she starts with a consonant, is mun she better. And the I and he is 0. Mun she better is the correct translation of these forms. I will hug you guys, and he will hug you guys. We'll have the root harapuruk. And before that, we add the object prefix, which is aha harapuruk. Before aha, the almorph of the future prefix is p, not mun. So the form is paha harapuruk. Some of you have forgotten to spell out both ha and have lost points, but the correct form is paha harapuruk. Then we have you will leave, which is ikshi, one of the few verb roots that start with a vowel. Before that, the almorph of the future prefix is p, not mun, so ikshi. And you, singular, is chi pikshi. I killed it is the root for to kill is beja. It starts with a consonant. Before that, we add the prefix e, it, which starts with a vowel. And before that, the almorph of the past prefix ik is actually 0, and I is also 0. So e beja. So these are the correct answers for problem 5 on Eric Bakcha. So I also have to mention that we had to adapt the translations of some forms because we work with a lot of languages at IOL, and actually the past tense and the future tense we used in the English version of the problem are not precise because Eric Bakcha doesn't have tense, but rather mood. It has realis mood and irrealis mood. Realis is something that is happening or has happened for sure, and irrealis is something that can potentially happen, which is why in Estonian and Finnish, for example, we used the conditional mood for rendering those forms. But these are necessary adaptations because I think not a single language used at IOL distinguishes between precisely realis and irrealis. And another thing is that the third person prefixes are not in fact specified in the Bakcha for gender animateness. So they don't actually mean she, he, it, but rather all third person singular meanings are conveyed by the same prefixes. So we had to arbitrarily choose a specific pronoun in each language. In English, we went for he and it. So just so you didn't have to cope with additional complications like I/he/she/it. And this has led to some sad conclusions in some languages. For example, a contestant from Finland was very disappointed with the correct translation of the form Chikshiwenaha, me palit because in Finnish heidet is animate, and actually we didn't mean to cut up living beings. You can chikwenaha a vegetable or any inanimate thing. So actually the translation me palit me would be also correct. So this problem was quite easy when compared to the first two problems, at least. Very few of you haven't scored have scored less than 0.3, and very few of you haven't submitted a solution. And most people actually scored somewhere between 5 and 10 points, and the average score is 7.11. And unfortunately, no participant has scored 20 for this problem. We had 3 solutions that came really close, and 2 of them contained well, all 3 of them contained the same mistake with respect to Momoboro. They give both translations, I will bite us and he will bite us, instead of just giving he will bite us. But well, this just happens. And 2 of them contained otherwise contained perfect answers, but some omissions in the theory part, in the explanations part, which is why they didn't score 20. And the 3rd participant has given a perfect account of the theory, but has failed, has forgotten, well, has some small typos in the assignments. And we decided to, we means the 4 jury members who graded this problem, which are Ksenia Gilarova, Maria Rubenstein, Tehun E, and myself. So the best solutions go to someone who scored 18.4. And this person comes from the team Japan Samurai. And it is Ryo Ogawa. Congratulations. Congratulations. The second best solutions go to best solution goes to someone who scored 18.7. And it goes to someone from team Korea Nyun. And it is Chino Chang. Congratulations. And finally, the solution that scored 19.0 goes to someone from team Russia Strelka, and it is Elvira Ageva. So now we are done with this. Quick break for Solver's choice. Okay. So I stop sharing the screen, and then we will continue with the solutions of the team problem.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andre, for the presentation. All right, so the solver's choice, I mean, based on the reaction in the chat, I think it's already clear to many of you, but you guys by far with 89 votes voted a certain problem, the favorite one. And if only I knew the etymology of the Kiloview language, then I would have maybe found a bunch of bananas, but all I have for Sam at the moment is these banana-shaped cases. So I'm going to present Samuel Ahmed with the Solver's Choice Award, and with the how many classes of bananas. Yeah, come yourself, show yourself to the camera. You know, this is yours. Probably you will get something more proper from the organizers in the mail in a couple of months. It's lovely problem. Also liked it. Definitely worth the all-nighter, and I hope that my fellow jurors concur. All right, back to you, Andrei.
Oh, I shouldn't have stopped sharing my screen. This was quick.
I mean, it's just one problem.
You could have awarded it to all 5 authors. Okay. So, I have to go back to the presentation because I have switched to the YouTube channel. And okay, can you see?
I can. Yep.
Okay, so hopefully everyone else can. We will continue with the solution of the team contest problem on the Garifuna, Lokono, and Caribbean languages. So first to present the languages, this is where they are spoken. We have even given a map in the actual problem set. Garifuna is currently spoken mostly in Honduras and Belize, but also on the coast of Guatemala, and as far as I know, on the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua. But historically, their speakers, as you know from text 1 of the problem, arrived from the island of Saint Vincent by the way of Roatán. Actually, they made a stop at Jamaica in between, but whatever. So we also have the Lokono people and the Caribbean people, which live in the region known as Las Guayanas, Guyanas, or in English, I'm not sure if you can say the Guyanas. But both languages are spoken in French Guyana, Suriname, Guyana, and Venezuela. And they belong to 2 entirely distinct language families. Caribbean is a Caribbean language, and Lokono is an Arawakan language, just as Garifuna. So we have 2 Arawakan languages and 1 Caribbean languages, one Caribbean language represented in the problem. A bit of history. The Garifuna descend from the island Carib. The island Carib are a nation of mixed Arawakan and Caribbean descent who are native to the Lesser Antilles. And it is hypothesized that several centuries ago, probably about 10 centuries ago, if I'm mistaken, the Caribbean-speaking invaders, mostly or maybe exclusively males, decimated the Arawakan-speaking men that resided there at some point. And that way, the island Carib are descendants of Caribbean-speaking men and Arawakan-speaking women, which will be important later in the problem. The island Carib language is documented already by the French missionaries in the 17th century, because the language didn't have a writing system as any other language in the Americas before the European invasion. The 2 forms of island Carib are documented: the Vincentine island Carib and the Dominican island Carib in Dominica, or on Dominica. I'm not sure what preposition is to be used in English. And Vincentine island Carib is now extinct on St. Vincent, though in the 20th century there were still some speakers who were not sent on 3 ships to Roatán. In the 17th century, the French and the English established colonial rule over different islands. For example, St. Vincent was claimed by the English, and Martinique and Dominica were claimed by the French. And it resulted in a number of wars with the Carib population. there was the first Carib War and the second Carib War, and this is also when Europeans came up with the Atlantic slave trade, which brought enslaved people from sub-Saharan Africa to the Americas here, and also to the Lesser Antilles, which is a sad page of the history of humanity. The Second Carib War ended in 1796, and the British decided to deport the Caribs of St. Vincent to Roatán in order to prevent slave revolts in St. Vincent. You may know from the history classes about the slave revolts in Haiti, which became independent, and this didn't please the colonizers. And the Carib population with more salient African features were chosen to be deported because they were considered to be more dangerous to their enterprise, colonial enterprise, and were sent to Jamaica and then to Roatán, which now belongs to the country of Honduras, but back then it was British dependency. Whereas the Caribs with higher indigenous American traits were allowed to remain on St. Vincent, and they still live there to this day, but no longer speak the language. Of more than 5,000 Black Caribs that were deported, only about 2,500 survived the trip and arrived on Roatán. And since the population was too small to maintain the population in a sustainable way, they asked the Spanish authorities of Honduras to settle on the land, which is also a part you read in the narrative. So all the facts from the text are based on actual facts. So these are not fictional texts. These things actually happened. So the narratives come from the source of the Garífuna data for the problem is Diego Quesada's Grammar of Garífuna, Gramática de Lengua Garífuna, published in Hermosillo, la Universidad de Sonora. And I wanted also to say a couple of words on the sensitive nature of the texts, because this is something that linguists actually face when we do fieldwork. I also work with an indigenous language of the Americas. And when we do fieldwork, we more often than not, the text, the stuff we record is not just the man or the woman, the banana is on the table, I don't know. Usually we get to work with more complicated stuff as that, and this is why one of the texts in Diego Quesada's grammar involves topics such as death and stuff, well, whatever. So now we get to the problem itself. Many of you have succeeded at assignment A. There are multiple ways to match the sentences, either by means of identifying common words, inflection, also the loan words that were specified could help you. And regarding this latter point, it is important that Garífuna doesn't really have the sounds p and k, so these sounds usually change to p and g, whereas that does exist in Garífuna, but it's a rather marginal sound, as we will see. So some of the loan words that we were supposed to find in the text are not so straightforward to identify. For example, pulazo comes from the French word place, the place. Aprender comes from Spanish aprender, to learn, and tabula comes from table, also French, which is means table as well. And we provided the transcriptions of these words for those of you who don't know how to pronounce Spanish, French, and English, which was supposed to happen. So this part was not so difficult, and many of you have succeeded with filling this table. So based on these sentences, you could identify some common words, and this is the final assignment, which includes the following verbs and nouns. And many of you have succeeded to identify at least some of them. Maybe not all of them, but at least some of them. So the Garifuna grammar, you were not supposed to write that out, but it helped immensely in resolving the assignments B and C. In Garifuna, verbs tend to come first. That is the word order in Garifuna. The canonical word order is VSO, verb, subject, object. The negation is achieved by means of prefixing the prefix M to a verb in its nominalized form. There are two grammatical genders because nouns can be either masculine or feminine in Garifuna, which includes not only nouns for humans, but also nouns such as canoe, ship, inanimate nouns, just like in many familiar European languages such as Portuguese, Spanish, Ukrainian, Russian, Romanian, and others. Well, some of these languages actually have 3 genders. Garifuna has only 2. And the demonstratives agree in gender. Le is masculine and to is feminine. It works both as this and as the in English. And if we want to say this for that, then we add ra. Lira wasn't the problem, tura was not in the problem. And that not visible is ligira for masculine and tugora for feminine. It was also not in the problem. These person prefixes especially were very important for the problem. Also, the suffixes appear for objects. The prefixes are used both for expressing the notion of possession, my, hand, your, whatever, and for subjects of verbs. And the pronouns are based on these prefixes. So when we add gia or guya to the person prefix, we get the pronouns, sometimes with vowels that appear here or there. Number in nouns is not very important in Garifuna, but human animate nouns can receive a plural suffix, which is irregular, just like in Kiloview. For example, Liberigu is his brothers, Wigurinya is men, Harutinyu is white people, Ituno is sisters. The adpositions in Garifuna work as prepositions. That is, they come before the noun, but they receive a prefix that agrees with the noun. So you don't usually have, when I give something to or for someone, which is the dative case in the languages that have cases, typically, or adhesive in Finnish and Estonian. So un will always take a prefix that agrees with the noun. If I give something to a woman, I will say tun blah blah blah, and if it is a man, it will be lun blah blah blah. So the interrogative words are ka, which can be either what or who, and if I add the suffix ba to it, it is a future. What will or who will. The numerals for 1, 2, and 3 are indigenous. Aban and Biama are of Arawakan origin, and Uruwa is of Caribbean origin, alone from Carigna. And the word form for Gadru is already of French origin, quatre, as are all other numerals from 4 upwards. The forms of verbs include a prefix for subject, the root, an optional suffix that could indicate voice, such as reflexive, actually passive. Then we can have an suffix encoding the aspect. optional, and then the object. The nominalized verbs have the suffix un, in, or n after the root, typically. And the spectral suffixes, you were not supposed to identify this because this is too complex and there are too few data, but I just gave this anyway, just so you know. Ba is imperfective, nya is progressive, gi is continuative, whatever. Umut or t is completed action in the past, which is known in language as aorist, and uma or a or ha for the perfect aspect. Uwa is the passive and ma is imperative. So these are the answers for the assignment B. You can in English and Spanish. Well, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to discuss every single phrase. I think I should not, because otherwise we will not finish ever. But anyway, you had to pay attention to the prefixes or the person prefixes, because these were important and graded. Okay, so I think everyone saw these briefly. These are the translations of phrases from English to Garifuna, which was a bit more difficult. I think no single team has managed to translate all of this, but at least you have tried. And there are some correct answers as well. So you had to be careful about the prefixes, the person prefixes, and the negation. So now we get to the assignment D, where you were supposed to identify correspondences between lacuna and words in your language. In order to do that, you obviously should have compared Garifuna words with Lokono. And in some cases, it was possible to establish regular correspondences. For example, Garifuna Ara matches Lokono D, as in Ariha Dukun, Arumuga Donkon, Arana Uduna, Arigi Diki, Arigi Jike. Actually, not Diki, it's Jiki and Jike in Lokono. So the K, the bold is the wrong consonant in this example, but the K sound in Lokono corresponds to a H sound in Garifuna, Kabo and Dikun, Uhabu, Ariha. The G sound in Lokono corresponds to G in Garifuna, for example, Kuthu, Agutu, Jiki, Arigi, Jike, Arige, Donkon, Arumuga. Also, T corresponds to T, which will be important later on. And for this reason, we wrote that the correspondences in the word for that one feminine, Dora, are not completely regular, because we would expect Hora based on the no, wait, we would expect Tora in Lokono, and it is Tora, not Tora. There is also the correspondence between O and U, which occurs in multiple words. And the assignment D2 was about the verb to sleep, where Aruguma corresponds to Donkon, and you were supposed to find out that the sound M changed to N in Lokono before K. And in fact, in the earliest documentation of Lokono from the 18th century, we find forms such as Adumkun with mk, but not in the modern varieties spoken in Guyana, French Guyana, and Suriname. So now we move to the assignment E. As I already said, the island Carib are thought to descend from Arakan-speaking female population and Caribbean-speaking male population. And for this reason, some items in the lexicon differ between the female speech and the male speech. Whenever female speech and male speech differ in Garifuna, the female speech uses words inherited from the ancestral Proto-Arakan languages and are thus cognate or akin to the respective Lokono forms, whereas the male speech uses Carigna loans. That old grammar in Garifuna is of Arakan language origin, so that we know that the language was transmitted from women to their offspring. And the only grammatical difference, which is really salient in the data, is that Lokono uses an entirely different prefix for the first person singular, where Garifuna has no or n for my, I. Lokono has da, which is unrelated. And also the personal pronouns in Lokono are not formed using anything like guya or giya, but rather it has e for the personal pronouns, such as in the word for b, you. It will be important for the cement e, because we'll have forms such as they for I, which has the prefix da and e. Here in the word for moon, happy and kati, the correspondence between her and k is irregular because we would expect gati. So these are the answers for the assignment E. The male speech column, where it differs from the female speech, has a Carigna loan, and the female speech always has a Arakan word. There is also the correspondence between g and sh before an e. Both go back to ki, which became gi in the Garifuna and she in Lokono. So we have the. In the word for pepper, you were supposed to apply the knowledge obtained from the word for kuthu, which is ati in Lokono. It is actually the Spanish word for pepper, which is ají, is also borrowed from another Arakan language, Taino, just so you know, as many other words such as hamaca. The hammock is of Arakan origin, but it is not cognate with this word. And also other familiar words are of Arakan origin, such as barbecue, and can't remember any other just now, but there are not many more, especially in Spanish, but also in English. So some words are Carigna loans in both in female speech and in male speech, or as we say in linguistics, in both gender lects. For example, urwa is a Carigna loan, which is found in Garifuna, both in female speech and in male speech. So you were just supposed to find stuff out. Sometimes the assignment A could help you. For example, the word mua is found in the title of text 2. Someone was killed because of land. And Wuriera was also in the assignment. Awasi was in the assignment A. And well, you were supposed to identify all these words. So these words. And now we can move to Lokono. Using data from the assignment E, we already know can identify some words in the assignment, but I gave here already the correct answers. It wasn't actually too difficult. I will just say a couple of words about the Lokono grammar. So in these examples, we can see a number of verbs that have a slight change in the vowel at the end of the root. It can be either a or u. So when it is a, the action is usually incomplete to an extent, and the object is affected to a lesser extent. For example, Lufarafa, he will fight with a jaguar, as opposed to Lufarufa, he will kill a jaguar. So Lufarufa is when the action is complete and the object is affected to a greater extent. In this case, unfortunately, the jaguar is killed. So sad. So we also have shimaku, to call, kanabu, to hear, as opposed to kanaba, to listen. The suffix fa is actually a plural marker, or sorry, a future marker. You could also identify the plural marker in nouns, which are non for animate nouns and be for inanimate nouns. You knew from the assignment E that Kojibyo is bird. Actually, this is the source of the word colibri in French, which is hummingbird and similar words in many other languages. So all these are words of Arawakan origin. You could also find out that the person prefixes are da for the first person singular, lu or le for the third person singular, wa for the first person plural, hu or he for the second person plural, na for the third person plural, de for me as object, we as us for us as object in the assignment, and hu for you guys as object, call you guys, lokwa, hiri lokwa hu, by your names, you guys. The numerals and the article do, which is actually only used for female singular, we have removed in the final version of the team problem the article li, which is masculine singular. So they precede the nouns. The adpositions follow the nouns, so they are post positions. Ka on a post position, as in jakoka, means kolokoka refers to the present state. Koloko means in an unbounded container, and jako means on the surface of, as in on, or well, many languages have a similar distinction between the adpositions. Hororo is both earth, ground, and landform. And these are the correct translations of the sentences from Lokono to your language and from your language to Lokono. So I'm not supposed to announce the team context winners, and I end here. But I would like to thank, for my part, everyone who has graded the team contest problem, because I almost couldn't do that. I only translated some solutions from Estonian and Bulgarian, and because I was too busy with my problem on Eric Bakcha. I think it was graded mostly by Takeru Sommers, by Hugh Tubbs, by Milena Veneva, of course, who is my co-author, to whom my warmest thanks, and by by Alexeis, and possibly by some other people. I didn't accompany the process really, so I don't know. Please correct me if I missed someone. And I also forgot to thank everyone who had helped me translate and test my problems, which is a bunch of people, including some people unrelated to IOL who have helped me translate stuff from Korean and Japanese and Chinese here in Brazil. So I want to thank publicly my friends Jie and Elian for translating stuff from Korean, Japanese, and Chinese for me. So I stop here to give the word to Alexis.
Thank you so much, Andrei. So first of all, if you want to list all graders, we actually threw a lot of forces at that problem. There was Ellie Warner and Hugh Dobbs, and also Nathan Sommers, and I even couldn't keep all the track of what's happening. So yeah, and second, I would like to thank Andrei for, first of all, composing these wonderful problems, and second, for staying up another night in a different time zone just to tell you about the solutions. And also, I would like to add, I really like the fact that you, Andrei, included this information about the Garifuna people, just to remind everybody that each language that they assign a problem on has actually history. So they're always, it's not just a puzzle, they're real people with history and culture speaking the language. So it would be nice to remember that once in a while. And also when we compose problems, sometimes we recruit consultants from these languages if we can find a living native speaker, and they're usually very excited to have their culture and their language shared with the rest of the world. So I would encourage you to be curious, and after you've solved the linguistic problem, find out something more about the people who actually speak this language. So that is going to be all from me. Thank you very much again to all the authors and to all of you. We're over 150 people now who listened to the whole presentation. The closing ceremony is going to be quite soon, in 15 minutes, just for everybody, enough to possibly grab a quick bite and for us to maybe take a much necessary quick nap. And I won't be there, but I will stick around in the chat if you want to ask something about the IOL, and the much deserved and long-awaited awards will be presented by Stanislav Gurevich and Ivan Derzhansky just in under an hour. That's going to be it for now. And yeah, goodbye. Also, I'm not actually quite sure how to stop the stream because Bruno was the one doing it. So I'm just going to keep staring into the camera until he does it.
We can also stare to the camera so that.
Let's all stare to the.